Hey, how's it going, everyone? Before we get started into this next episode, I want to give a shout out to Seth Roy of North Mountain Goshawks for being a continued supporter of the podcast. And if you're in the market for a new Russian, Finnish, or North American goshawk, particularly a parent-reared one, Seth's the guy you want to hit up. He produces great game hawks. If you want to get on the list for next year, then hit him up at ostringer3@gmail.com. Send him a message on Facebook at North Mountain Goshawks, or fill out the information form at northmountaingoshawks.com and tell him we sent you. I also want to give a quick shout out to Brett Reese of Devils of Dirt Hawking for the awesome new design work that he's done for the logos for the podcast. And he's got some new merch out, some new designs. If you are familiar with him, or even if you're not familiar with him and his work, you should definitely go to devilsofdirthawking.com, pick up some merch, and throw him some support. He does some great stuff. And now, on to this next episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast.
So I walk up to the pond and I just lay down on the berm, like, what do I do next? You know, it was all telemetry. So I pull out the old, orange-handled jumbo box and point it around, and I don't have anything, and I'm listening to these ducks quacking, thinking they're just all gonna fly away, and I'm gonna have nothing. And I turn it. Probably 20 minutes goes by. It's howling wind at this point, and I turn it on, and she's right above me, like out of nowhere. I look for her and I can't find her until I see this just flash of white, and I'm thinking, oh man, she's like she's on the money. Like, probably, I don't know how high, probably 600 feet is my guess from the size, maybe higher. And I pop over that pond, and the ducks fly away, and she just comes down and whacks a mallard right in the sagebrush, and that was the start of the season that year. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast. And I know I've been bouncing around quite a bit here, but these next handful of episodes are going to be the rest of the ones that I recorded earlier this year while I was in Wyoming working, and Jeff and Lauren Redig were the ones that helped set a lot of these up. So thanks to them for their efforts on that. I was able to get quite a few recordings done in and around different parts of Wyoming, including Sheridan and other areas, and I wanted to make sure to get these out before too much more time went by. But this episode was the one that I had a chance to record while I was passing up through the area where John Coffman lives. He was nice enough to host me for an evening, and we had a chance to sit down and have a fun conversation about longwinging and different other aspects of things, including conservation, different outlooks on, what we're going to be able to do to mitigate land loss and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this episode with John Coffman, and I hope you enjoy these next handful of episodes that are going to come at you from Wyoming. So here we go. This is really nice out here, as I was telling you before. Where I'm at down in Rock Springs right now, to each their own on scenery preferences and just overall landscape and, just overall environmental preferences. I can see the appeal of being up here, or I guess, is this up or is this down, or where am I right now? I know I'm in Lander, but where geographically is that in proportion? Believe it or not, I didn't even take the time to look at it on where it was at on a map. I just put in the address and went. So
perfect. Yeah. Yeah. We're in central Wyoming, which is just a little town in Montana. So, just keep going on I-25 till you get to the Canadian border and you'll be in Wyoming.
Fair enough. Yeah. This is definitely, like, overall a little bit better scenery, I think. But it's still, well, as in most parts of Wyoming, it's still out in the middle of, like, absolutely nowhere. So.
Yeah, we're in Red Canyon, which is, it's a biodiversity hotspot in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So you're also in a national natural landmark. So it's registered with the Park Service, but it's a beautiful place. not only is it beautiful though, but there's a ton of just plant diversity and important animal habitat, which is special in a lot of ways.
I can see that. I mean, there's lots of areas around here that I'm kind of surprised, I don't know, like, have as much biodiversity as it has, especially since like 10 months out of the year, as I so lovingly refer to it as the ice planet of Hoth, for, you need a tauntaun to get around all over the place around here for like 10 months out of the year. But
yeah.
It is amazing how much different wildlife and plant life and everything that there is around here.
Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff growing on that ice planet too, but
or maybe, yeah,
just below the crust. No, I mean there's the way the geology just butts up against climate patterns. There's all these different plant communities. When we're looking at these blood red rocks, which are Jurassic, there's sometimes some old dinosaur tracks in them. There's plants that grow on there that don't grow anywhere else in the world. It's just right here.
Yeah, no, I find that all that stuff, interesting. And, I think that, whenever I lived for about a year straight out of high school, like going to audio school out in Phoenix, that's part of the reason why I used to love going up to Sedona like every other weekend just to hike around, hang out, is because I think that's why this area feels a little bit more appealing to me, is because, like you just said, all the red rocks, just the landscape and the scenery, I think kind of almost subliminally reminds me of that. And just that different area and all the different rocks, formations and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's beautiful for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, out of curiosity, how did you end up out here? Have you always lived out here, or did you end up out here just because of work, job? What was the case?
Yeah, I came out here for work, but primarily, before this, I was living in southern New Mexico. I'm from Texas, which, you can count on any guy from Texas to tell you that he's from Texas. but yeah, I moved up here about 10 years ago, trying to, I was interested in sage grouse conservation and also to fly them, but just to help out to some degree and keep that species going. I wanted to get involved in that. I've been a part of conservation, since I graduated from college and well deep into college, but yeah, it just seemed like there were solutions, and there were opportunities to make a difference. And so I wanted to get up here, but also when I was living in New Mexico, we were in the middle of a drought. I had 2 new setter pups and couldn't find any birds. And it seemed like a suitable place to find some cold water.
Yeah. And whenever you were living in New Mexico, I mean, were you primarily trying to, I'm assuming, like quail and other, types of birds like that is kind of what you were sort of pursuing, especially if you just had setters, right?
Yeah, there's a turning point. There's all these weird little forks in the road, right? I had done my apprenticeship in Texas, but then it sort of fizzled out, and I needed to start it up again when I went to New Mexico. So when I first moved there, I thought about, all those guys flying falcons on hair with coursing hounds, and that, is
Jeers on jacks, man.
Yeah, on. Yeah, it's intriguing. I mean, even like a prairie falcon would be exciting to see.
Sure. Yeah.
And I reached out to a guy about a Tazi pup in Albuquerque, but just never pulled the trigger. And I had met some setters over the years. I had always just had an affinity for bird dogs. I like them. And then I just went that direction pretty soon after. But no, when I was in New Mexico, I was hawking jackrabbits with red tails.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'm always kind of, I mean, certain dogs are all, of course, I should say certain dogs, of course, are known for certain specialties, right? But I'm always somewhat hesitant to paint certain breeds in a particular niche or corner, because, I mean, as I think everybody that deals with dogs or falconry or whatever long enough that knows that sometimes, some of these breeds can be pretty versatile in some of their applications. So, I just, Anytime you hear setter or pointer or Vizsla or whatever, you automatically think bird dog, pointer, right? Pointer.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, did you try and do multiple different things other than just the hares or jackrabbits? Or, I mean, did you try and do anything else while you were out there? I mean, that's what you said you primarily did, but.
Yeah, I mean the setters didn't get too involved in the jackrabbit hunting. I had bird aspirations. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find any.
Yeah.
I really, once I'd flown a couple red tails there, and I had Paul Domsky had gave me a Harris hawk for a little while that he was using in abatement for pigeon stuff at hotels, and I flew it for a season and tried to get that bird to take quail, but he was pretty made to bunnies. And we just couldn't find them hardly. There were it was just a dry period, and I was hawking rabbits in the suburban areas and behind these dams and right next to people's houses and trying to find whatever little public space had some green grass.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dogs were pretty young, and I was trying to get out and quail hunt with them. I went down there to the Boot Hill once to do some Mearns quail hunting because me and a couple buddies just couldn't find any blue quail, or I guess they're called scaled quail now, but they just weren't around. So we took a trip out there, and I had those couple of dogs that were fairly young, and got out of the truck at this spot that looked good, and my two setters ran over with my buddy's setter to this log, and they're all three pointing, and then all of a sudden, like a wild pig just comes busting out and chasing right after us. And I fell down with a shotgun. All the dogs went every which way, and my buddy's just running as fast as he can. But yeah, we just had a tough time trying to find birds in the middle of a drought.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard that from multiple guys that have had to move around quite a bit because, like as you said, when the water becomes scarce, so do the quail in certain areas and stuff. But I mean, the reason I wanted to clarify and ask that question though is because, I mean, I'm sure you've kind of heard already me talk about having my dachshunds and Vizslas and stuff, and unfortunately, we don't sometimes learn until we learn that sometimes certain dogs or breeds or whatever the case is terminology you want to use is going to be a good or a bad fit sometimes until you get one and start trying to have that practical application.
Yeah, just bust them out of their molds that we're stamping them out of. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, the Vizslas, I mean, they're called versatile Vizslas for a reason, but I mean, mine would definitely do fur and feather, but I don't have much feather where I'm at, and that's where they really excel, in my humble opinion. I mean, she would kick up rabbits and stuff for me, but the thing about like where I'm at, and I didn't know if this was kind of the case in some of your spots too, and it sounds like it kind of is if you're hawking more like urban, type settings and semi-residential, But Vizslas, like bigger dogs like that, just really aren't great fits in general for those kind of areas, at least in my opinion.
No, and it definitely wasn't my preferred hawking setup. I really just feel super connected to big old wide spaces, and those are the kind of dogs that take to it pretty well. We were, all that stuff that Mike Clark was doing in California with slope soaring and thermals really caught my eye, and I think because I like falcons, I tried to apply that to red tails a lot too, and it was super fun. You get out there and put that red tail up in some public land, and she just take off in a thermal and follow you along like a loyal peregrine, and you're bumping jackrabbits and they're running, and she's just coming down like a battle axe. It's hard to beat.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that would be cool to, I'm sure this is probably applies to you in some ways too. I mean, I think it applies to almost every falconer really, but there's always those things that you wish that you could do. And unfortunately, unless you're just naturally blessed to automatically be in an area or have the ability to move to an area where you can do almost literally anything that you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all these things, we romanticize so much in our minds about how we think it would be so cool to be able to do this, that, or the other and stuff. But I do agree that, the slope soaring deals with red tails and also, like we were just briefly touched on, the bigger long wings on jackrabbits and stuff like that would just be, in my mind, I think it would be really cool. I still haven't gotten a chance to see either of those in person yet.
No, neither have I.
But, it seems like it would be pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as what you're doing around here, though, you said you moved here primarily for work. And, did you already have, as far as, when you decided to move from New Mexico, did you come straight from New Mexico up to here?
I did. Yeah, I was living in Las Cruces and in Deming for a little bit too. But yeah, we moved from there, had a 6-month-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and now they're 12 and 10 and riding dirt bikes down the road and trying to get in trouble. But yeah, we moved up here, and I've been at this job ever since, which is taking care of a 50,000 acre ranch.
That's I'm sure that's not a small task.
No, there's a ton of people involved, and I wouldn't say that my role is critical, but I do feel the responsibility for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty much like, I know a handful of people that have kind of roles or jobs or lifestyles even similar to yours, and yeah, it's just like, it seems like the daily chore list like never really ends for them.
Yeah, well, luckily I don't have to mess around with livestock too much. I'm just kind of working with people, which has its own chore list for sure.
I bet. Yeah, I'm sure that sometimes work gets sometimes created for you too, where you didn't think it was going to be and stuff. And then anytime you incorporate multiple people doing multiple things, it seems like there's always things that kind of pop up out of the woodwork sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's neat though. I'm kind of envious of people like yourself that, once again, living in an area like this it wouldn't be my thing, but there's certain aspects of it that I do find envious. It seems like the amount of other types of freedoms you have would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, there's plenty of room, to fit in falconry, and, I get to throw my dog in the truck, and there's some fringe benefits. I don't get paid a whole lot, but there's plenty of, waking up to sunrises in a canyon that are hard to beat. Although sometimes getting paid in sunsets is not always what it's cracked up to be. But I can't think of anything better just to see the way places change over time, floods and droughts, and changes to management that you might take, and the birds that appreciate you leaving a little bit of cover in a meadow. There's a lot of value in seeing that through time that I've grown to love for sure.
I bet, and I think there's a lot to be said for, just simply, you can't ever put a dollar amount on just simply like being happy with what you're doing, especially for a job.
You bet.
I think every passing year, what maybe things might have been like had I chosen a different way to go about things. And I'm always, like I said, that's part of the thing that I'm envious of to a certain degree is, the people that I know that just absolutely, totally dig what they're doing every day. It's gotta be nice. I don't know what that's like, but that's gotta be nice.
Oh, it's all perspective sometimes, I think. It sometimes feels like you don't know how you got here, right? Mm-hmm. Like you were talking about going to sound engineering school, and mm-hmm. When I was in high school, all I wanted to do was be in a punk rock band. And so I was looking for colleges with sound engineering, but I couldn't tune my guitar, worth a damn. So I figured maybe I should do something else. But, yeah, it's those forks in the road that take you off in a new and different direction you just never expected.
Yeah. Well, and when I was 14, like honestly, like all I could think of was, the audio engineering side of things was going to be my backup plan, right? I was going to be in a touring band and doing all this stuff too and everything. And so I totally relate to that
just
dream.
A bunch of washed up rock stars.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I was going to tour all over the world, and there was nobody that was going to tell me anything different.
Same here.
Nobody was going to tell me that wasn't going to happen. And, life happens, man. You get served some humble pie. I got served mine when I was about 19 and realized that I like being able to eat.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if that was similar to kind of what happened with you and how things changed for you. But I know for me, I was just like, I'm not going to be able to afford to live anywhere doing this. What am I, I'm going to have to figure something else out. So anyway.
I don't know if I've let go of that dream quite yet. Every once in a while, I've realized like, oh, this is never going to happen. But then I think like, oh man, what would a garage band be like playing in the park of 4th of July? It'd be pretty pathetic, I imagine.
Yeah. Once you have certain degrees of things that you accomplish, the next, all you can think about is the next thing after that, right? And then what you did before isn't near as appealing anymore. I've been in cover bands. I've been in, I've done like micro amounts of like regional touring and stuff like that. And once you now as like a 40-year-old, you couldn't pay me enough money to be in a cover band again, dude. There's no way. And people have asked me before, it's like, if you had to choose between just falconry and music, and what would you, and before their sentence is even out, it's falconry.
Yeah.
Period. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts, because especially, once you have to deal with, trying to find like 4 or 5 other guys.
Oh, it's a marriage. It's kind of crazy. Falconry's easier.
It is. Like, I'd rather deal with a bird that hates me sometimes than deal with like 3 or 4 other guys.
And a crazy drummer.
That I just want to choke, it's like, really? Seriously? Like,
it wouldn't take long. You're sick of them.
Yeah. It's, trust me. I've been in situations before where I have literally like, back in 2018, we put a project together to play a show over in Germany for like my endorsing bass company, right? Or the bass guitar company that I endorse, right? And let me just tell you from experience, for example, that like learning whether or not you can tolerate other people or not in a group that you're in, going and playing an international show, like a one-off show, and having to be with someone, these group of people for a week overseas, is not a good time to figure out whether or not you can be in a band with somebody or not. Like really.
Yeah. Maybe a tri-state tour or in a band.
Yeah, that would have been nice if that could have happened, beforehand. But that's a whole other long story I'll tell you more about later. Yeah. But you get it, you understand. So out of curiosity, getting back a little bit more towards, some of like your earlier beginnings, and, while you were dreaming of being in a punk rock band and doing all this other stuff, at what point did falconry get on the radar for you? We haven't covered that yet.
I think it was a fascination with birds well before that. My great-grandfather had a ranch on the Brazos River in north central Texas. And we used to go there when I was a kid, and it was before I could shoulder a shotgun. But I remember going out with the older guys in my family and walking through the fenced or the screened in porch that my grandpa or my great granddad slept in when it was too hot to sleep inside. We walk out in the field and they'd shoot birds and mourning doves. We did a little bit of bird hunting when I was a kid, but not a lot of deer hunting, because that was sort of a rich man sport in Texas. You had to have some land, and you had to, great granddad leased out that land to some wealthy folks from Dallas Fort Worth to do the deer hunting, but we got to shoot some birds. And they threw down those mourning doves on the table, and I just took one in the hand and was like completely enamored by how beautiful this bird, this little gray bird that flies around like in your hand, is just like filled with purples and black dots. And we'd walk back inside and eat a bologna and cheese sandwich on some Mrs. Baird's bread and come back out and the dog had eaten all the birds, so they were gone. But it wasn't, I it sounds weird to say, but I'd go in this little wheat field behind our house and wake up with with the bobwhite quail and talk to them. And I did my fair share of John James Audubon style, like shooting birds to look at them. Some cardinals that I buried just a natural history interest in birds. But then, the teenage years were a mess, man. It was all skateboards and punk rock and trying to do all the bad things. And it wasn't until I moved to Dallas for a tech job, and I was driving around and I'd see this weird, like, blue and orange owl. I had some terrible binoculars in the glove box, but I'd stop and look at this weird orange and blue owl. Then I got like a little golden guide, and I was on my way to work, and I'd see this blue owl all the time. And finally, I realized it was the back side of a kestrel. It was just its eye spots.
Yeah,
and learning that was a falcon, and it was I didn't really realize. At some point, I just decided to leave Texas because I grew up there all my life, and I was wanting to experience new things and go see new parts of the world. I moved to California, like right when that tech bubble burst, and tried to get a job, but couldn't. And I was working at a jewelry store. If you can imagine me selling you Zales outlet jewelry.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine that at all. But anyway, no, it's an interesting visual though.
Yeah, but I'd carried that, that interest in birds with me, and just trying to meet new people. I volunteered at a rehab center, and quickly my interest, I think, was shown, and they offered me a job. It was not great. Like, I still had to have a regular job, but now I moved from the Zales outlet to a bookstore, which was a little more reasonable. I felt like less of a scumbag selling books on a deal. But yeah, then I got my hands on some birds of prey that were coming in, and learned how to do fecal exams and fix broken wings and a lot of the medicine side of it. And our director at the time was a falconer and a UC Davis biologist. And at some point I just couldn't afford to live in California anymore, and we were moving. And so that director told me, like, you should try to apply for one of these Peregrine Fund jobs with the Aplomado Falcon, like hack site releases. So I came back and went to school in Texas, and for 3 years straight, and I was on that Aplomado project. They turned me down the first year that I applied, but then after that, I was meeting other falconers. I found a sponsor. My sponsor's Paul Juergens, who's the VP of Conservation for the Peregrine Fund, the domestic programs now, and I've just found a lifelong friendship with those guys.
That's cool. Yeah. So just trying to get the timeline straight here then. So, I mean, you started off, growing up in Texas, and then California, back to Texas, and then New Mexico, and then here.
Yep. You got it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
I've never been to Indiana, but it sounds nice.
There's no reason to. There's no reason to. You're more than welcome to come up anytime. I'm more than happy to take you out and stuff. But other than that, there's really no reaon to ever come through where I'm at in Indiana.
Same here. Wyoming's terrible. It's windy. It sucks.
It really, there's really no reason. I mean, legitimately, unless you just really like cornfields and stuff like that, then it might be paradise for you. But but no, that's so you mentioned this Aplomado project. I mean, tell me more about that then, because I mean, what all did that entail? I mean, what exactly were you doing with that?
I was working as a hack site attendant, so similar to what they did for the peregrines on that recovery. They were putting falcons in a hack box that were captive bred, and then releasing them in suitable habitat. And
not to interrupt you, but what part of Texas was this at again?
The majority of the recovery has been in South Texas, but I was working in West Texas, kind of far West Texas, near El Paso, and then southern New Mexico and central New Mexico.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll continue on then. I wasn't really sure geographically where this was taking place. So.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in West Texas, and it's all just mesquite dune lands now. And in getting up and talking to those Bob Whites, like I had no clue that all used to be grasslands. I mean, it wasn't until I got to college and started reading books about, explorers coming through and describing grasslands with yuccas that I really realized sort of what had been lost. But there are these remnants of grasslands that still exist, and that's what that northern Aplomado falcon needs the most. It needs open spaces to chase those birds and catch them, and not a lot of brush that holds owls and predators. And Texas is just seeing a increase in brush, mesquite, huisatch, all these kind of brushy species that choke out grasslands. Along with, we all benefit from agriculture to some degree, but farming has an impact on those grasslands as well. It's the fastest declining sort of North American habitat, and it used to be the biggest. But anyways, that's kind of what some of the demise of, some of the pressure on northern Aplomados. And I'm not a Aplomado biologist, so if I get this wrong, I apologize, but I did, when I was working on that project, we would get the captive bred birds from Boise. They were raised up there, put them in a hack box, and then we, myself and another attendant, were paid for the summer to be the parents, right? We were chasing off coyotes and owls and staying out, getting out there early in the morning, and we'd go home in the middle of the day or to our apartment, or no, it was a hotel in some awful little town that became pretty endearing, but not ideal. Like the bed was posted up. I was
getting ready to say, once you got over all the bed bug bites and stuff,
Don't mind the extra toothbrush that somebody left behind in the bathroom. We'll get to that later, but I mean, it was great. I read a ton of books. The guy that I was attendant with is, a colleague of mine in Oregon. He manages a nature conservancy ranch out there, and it was formidable, man. I mean, that summer, that first summer, like I would say, changed my life and trajectory at some point. At that point, I had an interest in birds of prey, but man, it really hooked when you're just sitting there watching, 6 or 7 young birds play around and grow and have that responsibility to make sure that they're, reclaiming some habitat that they were extirpated from at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure having a vested interest and a front row seat vested interest that was probably, I mean, how can you not have some degree of extra, skin in the game, so to speak, with all that, for sure. That's cool though. I mean, and how many years did you do that? Just the one or
3 summers?
You said 3 summers?
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah. It was kind of a summer college gig. I mean, we always talk about, falconry strains on marriage, but that like disappearing for a couple months every summer ended my first marriage. But it was, I mean, I guess it changed my life in more than one way, but in the end, I think it's just nothing but the better.
Yeah. I mean, if it ended a marriage, then I can understand your comment or your sentiment about, the changing the life trajectory, for sure.
I feel like that should be a NAFA pin, like the divorce pin.
Oh, that's hilarious. I've actually never thought of that or never heard that before, but that is hilarious. Yeah, it's just like, all right, somebody, you get the rabbit pin, you get the quail pin, you get the duck pin, you got the divorce pin, then you got the.
I wonder what it'd be. Would it be like a bride crying, or who knows?
Well, I don't know, but I feel like it'd almost be better as a patch, probably. But yeah, and then it would be funny too, because by default that'd be like the one patch or pin that 90%, 95% of most of the falconers that show up to the meet would automatically get, just for showing up and registering.
It just comes with a registration pack, and if you didn't get divorced, please give it back. It's an easier distribution that way. That's funny.
Oh man, yeah, it's just one of the boxes you check in your registration form, like beforehand whenever you sign up and pay your meat dues. Oh geez, that's hilarious. Yeah, well, I mean, to each their own. I mean, fortunately, it's a pin I gladly haven't earned yet.
Hell yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, you never know. I guess.
Sorry, honey, don't listen to this episode.
Well, like I said, I mean, it seems like you're doing all right now, though. I mean, it seems like you're doing pretty well for yourself. So
yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago, so
yeah.
That heart still sits on the sleeve every once in a while, but not too much.
Yeah, I bet. Well, so you did that for 3 summers until you graduated, and then that's when you kind of took the other path and went up to New Mexico at that point. Then, or how did that work out?
Yeah, I was going to the University of North Texas for my undergraduate, and that's when I was doing that field work with the Peregrine Fund. And I'd started my apprenticeship with Paul. I was flying kestrels, and not doing a lot with them. I caught a starling in the backyard and a couple of house sparrows at the cemetery, and freaked a guy out at the convenience store when he asked me, "Is there a wild animal in that box?" And, yes, but I never knew what it was. But yeah, no, I just between school and landlords and just tricky parts. I flew 2 seasons pretty mediocre with some kestrels, and then when I moved to New Mexico there was a stint in there where I worked in the wool field before I went to graduate school in Las Cruces, but and I didn't fly anything that one year. I had a female kestrel, but the landlord was like, "I said no pets," and I was like, "This isn't a pet. This is a hunting partner," and he didn't buy it.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that when I moved to New Mexico, I kind of had a long apprenticeship, right? It didn't go great the first couple years. There's always something in the way, the divorce, the landlord, and a bunch of excuses, right? But when I moved to New Mexico, I got a little more serious. I had a not the greatest start, but man, that red tail that I got going on, and I say we here because I had some help, right there. You have sponsors and you just have a community of people. We got that red tail going on slopes or soaring, over flat ground. And man, I wish I'd written more down about those years, because I think that would be fun to reflect on, but my notes are pretty poor, but it was enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, anytime you start having success, and I think that I don't know what your opinion is on this, but I don't know what your opinion is on this, but I think that when people have success early, that's what really hooks them. And the people either have one of 2 paths. Either they're kind of blessed and cursed simultaneously at having a really good bird or really good few birds to start off with, and don't have any real failure initially. But I think the ones also you can really tell are going to stick with things and have a lot of longevity are the ones that have, 2 or 3 really challenging birds or circumstances. And sounds like this is kind of like yourself a little bit, where it's like you have a lot of adversity initially, and then the ones that stick through that and stay with it, the ones are going to kind of be in it long term also. So
yeah, I mean, it was all self-inflicted adversity. I wouldn't say it was like a bad bird or a bad situation. I mean, I might have blamed it on that earlier, but no, I take full responsibility. I was just, if I don't have, if all I have is persistence most of the time. I don't have a lot of luck. I wish I had more of it, but man, I can really apply some persistence to this.
Well, and I think that if you don't have any persistence, then yeah, you're not going to be in this very long.
No. Yeah, it seems pretty tough to kind of be lazy about it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you really, I mean, you can, I guess theoretically, sure, you can be lackadaisical about it, but you're not going to see the returns that you're going to want to see out of it if you are.
No, and I feel like that clock is ticking sometimes, and it's just like, was it Harry McElroy was saying that, it's too bad that it takes a lifetime to figure this out. I'm like, God dang it, like I'm not gonna figure it out till the very end, I don't think.
You still won't have it figured out by then.
At least a little sliver, please.
Well, that's and I've talked about this very thing with several other people, though, that part of the fun and part of the continual persistence, though, is knowing that you're never going to be like a master or like a true you have that be all end all knowledge base with any of this. I mean, honestly, though, if you did get that, though, would you really want to keep doing it? I mean, for me, I know I'd be bored.
No, I think so too, but I would like some insight in what motivates a falcon, just a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think that all comes back to the good old food, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do. You're right. Sometimes it seems.
Yeah, well, I mean, food and the urge to reproduce, I guess, right? That's what motivates most animals, including humans.
You bet.
But, well, I mean, so once you got up here, what are you currently flying now? I mean, what are you mainly doing now in falconry?
I have a twice. Well, I guess it'd be going on third time. Intermewed August caught peregrine, so wild peregrine, female, and I like hawking waterfowl, but with the influenza, I haven't done a whole ton of that. I've shown her some ducks on creeks that I knew might have a good shot at, but mostly, yeah, prairie grouse, sage grouse. That's what I'm trying.
And I mean, once you got up here, did your primary focus shift pretty much completely to long wings at that point, or were you another one of these guys too that went through a stint of the whole goshawk fascination and stuff too, or was it mainly just long wings for you?
No, I mean I'm really intrigued by all the native birds of prey and goshawks for sure, but I haven't had a chance to fly one. I almost caught one here a couple years back, but no, I went straight to long wings. I tried to take a shortcut a little bit when I first got here. I had to wait a year before I was a resident and had could afford a hunting license. So that first year wasn't flying anything. But then I got a secondhand hybrid deer peregrine that was pretty old, and I'd struggled with him for a couple years. I was asking him to be like a full-blown game hawk, and he just didn't have it in him. He was pretty arthritic and really a treat. Like Scott Baker had raised him as an imprint. Like he was in his mid-20s, and he had some beautiful flights on sage grouse. But by the time I got a hold of him, he was out of steam.
Yeah,
which I can't blame him.
Yeah, a 20 something year old bird, man. It's just like you smack into one of those things, and brittle bones, man.
Oh
getting
yeah,
up there in age.
that bird is storied for sure. I mean, I think he hit a male sage grouse hard enough and kind of caved in one side of his head, and Scott put him by a wood stove and kind of gave him the season off, and he healed up. But he did, from that point on, refuse any big old boomers, which you can't blame him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like us trying to do some of the stuff we do now at 80-something years old or whatever? I mean, it's got to be kind of the equivalent, right? I mean, the things that we ask these birds to do for the amount of time that we have our relationships with them and stuff, like if some other creature or organism wanted us to do an equivalent type of thing for as long as, I mean, it wouldn't go over very well with us. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's, like I said, there's got to be something to that in dealing with these birds. I don't know, but
I think a life like the life of a predator is pretty tough. My son and I were just talking today about, I mean, can you imagine this landscape probably inspires a lot of these questions, but we were talking about mountain lions on elk and taking full grown bull elk, with 6 or 12 knives on their head and weighing 3 times as much. And yeah, being a predator, having to fight something to the death to eat is I think beyond a lot of us.
Yeah. I mean, because it's not exactly like going over to Walmart and buying,
Yeah, the Walmart's full of pigs and you have to catch one and kill it with a knife. Man, I'd pay money to see that.
Oh, yeah. Well, Well, I mean, depending on which Walmart and what area you go to, you never know.
Yeah,
You can get some kind of show.
Some might be more successful than others at sales.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you never know what you're going to see in some Walmarts, I guess. But yeah, no. So I mean, so you've had the one that hybrid and then this current Peregrine, right?
No, I had a bunch. Well, I mean, I after I got over trying to work with a hybrid, which I transferred to a rehabber, and he became like a pretty nice little ambassador for a couple of years, and then passed away naturally. But I was pretty enamored with prairie falcons. I put in for a peregrine permit, when I could, but I was just fascinated with prairies. I had always been. Like when I was in New Mexico, I wanted to fly a prairie too, but it just felt like I needed to take those steps to get there. And anyways, I looked and looked for prairie falcons on all the wrong places. I was looking for them in polls, and they do this weird sort of not north to south migration, but when all of the ground squirrels estivate, in August they head to the grasslands, like all the way from Idaho. There's a nice study on this, but like that Snake River canyon, they're leaving that and they're going east to the grasslands once those ground squirrels are gone, and then they sort of make these weird movements. So I was having a hard time finding them, and that one year I just flew. Like after having pretty, 3 unsuccessful years with that old hybrid, I was like, let's go back to the drawing board. I went and got a red tail and just had a blast. It was just slope soaring, cottontails. And one day we had, towards the end of the season in January with that red tail, I went out to this place kind of like this where these cliff bands and sandstone cliffs are out, and there's a lot of cottontails, and usually you have, 7-10 slips, and went out there and she missed a rabbit that she caught fur on that was going through this cave, like a little pothole in the sandstone, and kind of grabbed it and let it go. And then she went back, and it was windy. It was 20, 30 mile an hour winds that were hitting these cliffs, and so she was slope soaring, and I'd lose sight of her because she'd go high enough that it'd fall behind those cliffs, and she'd come back over the top of me, and I had a bunch of chucker in front of me that were running, and she made a try at those, which was pretty exciting. She got a hold of it, and it's just squirming like a little earthworm and she lost it, and she went back up one more time, and then we got a bunny up, and it was just a battle axe chop on that rabbit, and it was nice to have success again, like with a fresh passage bird that I could only blame myself for. All the positives and negatives were my fault, and that's the problem with secondhand birds is you want to blame everything on the other guy or the lack of knowledge that you have about its history, and that's not fair. I like to just blame myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having done I don't know, 2 or 3 secondhand birds now, particularly Harris hawks. I love to put a lot of. I know for a fact it's not always me. It's not all me for sure. I do know that. Yeah. I mean, sure, there's always things that we think we can do better, but there's also certain. I think there's also certain species where you're kind of already have some the deck stacked against you a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the secondhand bird thing, that's also something I've discovered that's not really for me either.
Nah, same here. I don't think I'd do it again.
Yeah. It's just not, I'm like you. I prefer to have to know 100% I screwed this up or I did this right.
Yeah. I think you learn a lot from that.
You do.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with that. And yeah, I mean, it's, and it's funny too. You this whole story that you just told, it reminds me of just like one of my current situations too. It seems like anytime you ever struggle for at least a couple seasons or so, the best thing you can do is just go back to Old Reliable.
You bet.
That passage red tail is always there to pick you back up, pick you back up off your feet, get you going again. And if you ever just need pick me up season or a nice change of pace. Just going back to that passage red tail again, man. It's just if there's ever anything that's going to put you back on track, that's usually going to be it.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked fondly back on that season. I mean, it was full of long walks and good slips and like this beautiful partnership that felt easy, right? I mean, trying to get a August caught peregrine to take sage grouse with a dog, and there's so many things that could go wrong. And I'm not saying I shouldn't say hawking rabbits is red tails is easy, but once you've done it before, like you said, going back to that reliable thing just feels good. I mean, you always hear these guys say, "Oh man, someday I'm going to fly a red tail again," right? But then they might not never get around to it. But it's worth doing. You bet.
Yeah, and I know that's how it was for me a couple seasons ago. I mean, after struggling and having to do all this different work stuff, just seems like just getting, well, for lack of better terms, it just kicked in the naughty bits for about 2 or 3 seasons in a row, just with all these cards, the deck stacked against you and stuff. I just remember telling myself, I need a quote unquote normal season. Like I need to be able to just not have any other extraneous factors working against me. I know that this is a bird that pretty much where I'm at now is always going to be workable, and I wanted to do squirrels with, and rabbits also, but more so squirrels. And it's just nice being able to know that this is a bird that in most areas where you're at, it's going to be work. Having any bird of prey is work. But that being said, there's some it's going to be a lot more work than others.
Yeah.
And especially considering your environmental factors where you're at, I didn't need any extra, I didn't need any extra BS. I didn't need any extra, mitigating factors or anything. I just needed something normal again. And for me, it was huge for me a couple years ago.
Oh, so. Yeah. It can really, turn it around to some degree.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so, after that, then, I mean, when did you pretty much, so was it shortly after that then that you switched back to longwings again after?
Yeah, that next season I had a rehab prairie falcon that got hit by a Subaru, and
how'd you know it was hit by a Subaru?
Well, that's what the rehabber said.
Did the rehabber drive a Subaru? I mean,
it had some burnt spees stuck to it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And I didn't really do much with her. I was trying to do this, just get her waiting on with pigeons and a lot of trials, and I didn't have GPS at the time, so I didn't really know exactly how high she was, but just getting her back in shape and molting her, and then I let her go. And then the next year I took a late IS prairie falcon out of an eyrie and flew her for 3 years, and man, that was a lot of fun. She took sage grouse her first season, and we had our disagreements, but for the most part, I found her like really enjoyable.
It's a prairie falcon. You're going to have some disagreements. Yeah.
No, those are also my fault too.
Fair enough. Yeah. I've kind of got a soft spot for that whole thing too. I mean, I really wish that I could have found out what that IS Tiercel would have done or been like had I had a chance to have him longer. But, I mean, it's just they're cool personalities, especially whenever you imprint one.
Oh yeah. I really I'm interested in how like a Tiercel prairie would handle like some of our partridge, because I've put big falcons over them in this country where there's a lot of brush. They just dump and they don't fly pretty honest. But I wonder if a high flying Tiercel would give them a chance to fly pretty honestly. And
I can see it working out.
Yeah, it would be fun. I try. But yeah, anyways, I had some help from a buddy here in town who had some ropes and carabiners and harnesses, and man, I am not okay with cliffs, man. I don't think that I would ever climb a cliff if it wasn't for, looking in a nest. But but prairie falcons live in some gorgeous country, just big old wide open country. They don't need a whole lot of cliff. And I spent a lot of time, when I had that red tail and the years before that, I just got to know some eyries and would go out there in the summer, which, I have the benefit of working in a place where some of those eyries are on the way to wherever I'm going. But I mean, right now, like where we're sitting, there's a peregrine eyrie in that canyon there. There's a peregrine eyrie over on the mountain behind you. There's 2 other prairie falcon eyries that are just, in a little bit of lower elevation from that. Like it's just, there's falcons everywhere. Although, some years they're more productive than others, but watching those little prairie falcons come in and has been super interesting. But anyways, that first season was pretty good. I don't ever take a lot of game, but I show them quite a bit of opportunities, and we I hunted a lot of ducks with her too, and off of like spring fed ponds and creeks and stuff, and she did great. I wouldn't say that she was the highest flying bird, but that's because I cannot like discipline myself enough to stop getting excited. Like I get in the middle of a setup and I'm just like, oh, and we got to do it now.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll come.
Well, I mean, just being real about it though. I mean, sure, like, these really super high stoops are great and everything. Not knocking them at all, but you don't need a 1,000 or 2,000 foot pitch to take wild quarry, whether it's ducks or whatever. I mean, most cases and most practical applications, I mean, for a lot of people, 400 to 500 foot pitches are going to be more than enough. And as far as especially being conducive to the types of terrain and stuff too. And I say this, not ever having been successful in taking game with a bigger longwing, but I have seen enough now and talked to enough people, and after a while you figure out what's practical and what's not. But yeah. I mean, would you agree with that statement? I mean,
if you want to catch game, for sure, I think you don't need that pitch, but man, when you do have it, it sure is cool.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Those speeds, that sound of slowly ripping paper, it's pretty addictive.
Yeah.
And you want to, or at least I want to understand sort of what motivates that, because obviously I've seen it in falcons where they realize like, oh, I need a little bit more speed to do this, and that's pretty impressive when they make that connection. But yeah, I want to see it. Like I want to see that as an extreme bird watcher, right? this thing that you very rarely get to see if you're just driving around. Like that's the addiction,
yeah,
for sure.
Well, and that's when you start getting the here's the part where we get to kind of have a little bit of fun at longwinger's expense, I guess, a little bit. But that's when you start hearing the whole like, well, yeah, like you kind of said earlier, it's not really about the how much quarry you take or whatever. Yeah. It's about the flights, and that kind of stuff.
I know it sounds elitist, but I think I have a pretty I have this weird reverence for the quarry too, where I don't just want to go like blast them from 50 feet, which I have done. And it doesn't feel like as good just to have that tally of quarry in my pocket, because like for sage grouse, like they just can't get up and get going.
Mm-hmm.
And if, and it's been accidental flushes where I just wasn't taking it down, but yeah, just to see that predator-prey relationship play out. Of course, you want to catch game, but I'm also sometimes rooting for the sage grouse to get away to some degree, especially in those low pitches. And I to be honest, like this is the first season where I have seen pitches over 1,000 feet, and they've been thermals and lazy flights, but they're special. And I've also seen some good flights from 500, 600 feet too, especially with ones where she's like working on them on her own. But I don't want to just stack up a bunch of dead sage grouse. Like and then that's just a weird quirk, right? Like we were talking earlier about like all these different falconers' relationships with falconry, and it's different. I work pretty hard to try to, and I don't want to sound like a hero, and I'm not. I don't mean it this way, but I spend a lot of my day job trying to give back to those birds in a way that's like habitat restoration, and it's this weird contradiction where like I spend the winter trying to kill them, and then I spend the summer trying to like help their habitats. I mean, the only thing I can equate it to is just some bizarro religion, man, which I'm sure dudes have it about rabbits and bobwhite quail and to some degree maybe maybe not starlings, but
no, there's no excuse in saving starlings or sparrows or house sparrows, I should say. Yeah, invasive species, no, they don't get a pass. They need to be annihilated.
Yeah.
But no, I understand what you're saying though, and I think, well, and to be honest, I mean that's really what all this is about, though.
Yeah.
I mean, falconers throughout the years, I mean, by default, have been some of the biggest conservationists as well.
You bet.
And I'm not saying that we understand that relationship better than anybody else, but I think that we understand it just as well as anybody else. I mean, that relationship that you can't fly these birds and pursue falconry if there's no game to pursue it on or with. And yeah, I mean, you have to have that respect for the prey base and that kind of love and passion for the prey base too, because otherwise you're screwed.
Yeah, or you could use it as an excuse for not being a very good falconer too.
Well,
which may be true too. I don't know.
that yeah, and I mean, who knows? I mean, everybody's going to have their points of view on all that, and but
the beauty of it is we can do it in our own special way, right? I mean, there's just a connection with wild places and wild critters that are individual from the bird to the person to the whatever dog you're bringing too. So
yeah, and totally agree. I mean, you just said it, like, incorporating, just there. We've talked about this before too, but I mean, people, of course, have great relationship with house pets, with their dogs and whatever. But your relationship with your hunting dog, though, that's also your house pet. But that one extra little step in your relationship, I mean, there's nothing like that either. That's its own thing too.
You bet. Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, it's just there's nothing really else like it. I mean, you kind of almost summed it up well by almost saying that you can equate it to a religion in a way. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody really has any better understanding necessarily than us on how these different relationships work. And sometimes it really is hard to put that into words. But yeah, I mean, I think overall though, as far as just how we just kind of understand these relationships and pursue these different relationships with these animals overall, I mean, there's very few other types of people that can say they have that similar type of relationship, I guess is what I'm trying to say with that. So.
I agree. I mean, and for thousands of years, it's not that weird, really. I mean, people have had partnerships with horses and dogs and goats and sheep, which I guess we eat those, but I guess maybe we eat dogs and horses sometimes too. But yeah, there's these long, I'm sure from the beginning of human history, we've had partnerships with animals, which is pretty intriguing. Another thing that falconers seem to have a pretty good insight on too is just the quarry, right? Mm-hmm. You think about a gun hunter coming out and hunting sage grouse or partridge, and they're doing it for 2 weeks. But a falconer that's after some of these upland species do it for 6-7 months and know how those animals move in response to their pressure or where they like to be in this part of the winter and that type of snow. And I think it's going to be invaluable, for biologists at some point take that into consideration, just the data that's collected, the stories that people have on places as we need to protect, these species, all, lesser prairie chickens and greater prairie chickens and sharp-tails and all these prairie grouse that, we used to see in Mutual of Omaha doing their drumbeat on the is anybody even going to know what that is? Probably not. Yeah. That's, it's like the magic of the prairies, man.
Well, and yeah, I mean, for sure, because I mean, a lot of I guess in summary, the best way to put it, I mean, we almost keep talking in circles, around this and kind of almost keep saying the same thing, just in different ways. But what it boils down to is we're the ones that, if there is going to be any kind of conservation effort made in a lot of situations for certain types of prey, I mean, a lot of the people that are going to be heading those, research, I don't know, whatever the programs or projects or whatever, I mean, a lot of times they're falconers. And because the reason you just cited, I mean, very rarely do other types of hunters or people in general like take as much of an interest in it as we do. I mean, because like we just said earlier, is if we don't get to see these birds fly, and we don't get to pursue what we like to do unless we know for a fact that these other prey animals are going to be there.
Yeah, and there's something missing from us to some degree if that's not available. I mean, look at the peregrine, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if everybody was just like, well, the peregrine's gone now, I guess we'll have to fly prairie falcons. Like, people were not okay with that. That was not something you were just going to roll over for. And yeah, I mean, there were only 39 nesting pair in the lower 48. Although I'm sure people have different ideas on exactly how that went, but now there's thousands of them. I mean, that's a success story, and I think we're going to have to apply that same grit and determination to some of the quarry that matter to us as well.
I agree. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And unfortunately, I mean, it's another one of those kind of somewhat grim topics that keep coming up, though, is that I think, unfortunately, each passing year, it seems like we get closer and closer just to the overall decline or overall just, I want to say demise even, but like bigger longwing falconry like in our country and stuff. It seems like each year a lot of it just keeps getting more bleak, and I mean, you would have more of an insight, with what you do and what you have done as to, I guess, what could be done to help mitigate some of that. But I've had this conversation with a few other people as well, and I don't think anybody's got like a real clear answer on what we can do to really stop that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to joke that, we'll have to all be flying starlings and the house sparrows. I've heard you say that before, and I'm not knocking that at all.
Yep.
It's
and squirrels. Don't forget squirrels.
Oh yeah, squirrels. But Paul Juergens and I were talking about this the other day. It wasn't all that long ago that there weren't any ducks, there weren't any deer. The game species were pretty much wiped out. There weren't any elk. It was probably 70, 80 years ago that there were just like game populations were tanked. And you think about all that wetland work that was done to bring back waterfowl. I mean, now there's tons of waterfowl, and they're the group of birds that's increasing the most. And there's deer in places like Georgia where there weren't any. There's elk. There's 1,200 elk here sometimes. So we have had successes. We just haven't realized them all the time. And we're just faced with new, different situations now. I mean, it's easy for me to say like, oh yeah, we need to take care of these wide open spaces because I live in the middle of it and I'm not like on the edge of Park City, Utah or something. But we're just faced with a new set of problems, and we can apply that same diligence and expertise to stave off some of these losses, or at least I have to hope so. I mean, even without hope, right? if you just got up and you did the thing that needed to be done, I mean, maybe it's given to an organization that you care about, or maybe, if you don't think they're going to do something right with your money, volunteer on a habitat project. I mean, we either have time or money or neither. And I think that as a group, we have applied ourselves, and hunters in general have applied themselves to conserving what matters most to us. And I think there's a role for falconers to play in staving off this, these changes. It just may take a lot of creativity and work.
Well, preach, man. Preach, John.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, this is, you're like the first person that's had like a non-bleak answer, like when I brought this up and kind of broached this, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a semi-refreshing different take on it, because, it seems like every other, you reference kind of the joke that was made about sparrows, starling, their house sparrows, starlings, and squirrels, and who knows, we may still end up there, but you're one of the first people that I've talked to that's kind of had like we can pull through this, it's cool. I mean, it's kind of a refreshing outlook on it, and I mean, I hope you're right.
Well, naivete is sometimes refreshing. No, I just see a ton of hardworking people on it. I mean, I see folks that care, and they're putting their money and their labor towards trying to turn it around in ways that I think are meaningful. They may not be, but I have to hope that my friends and colleagues in different roles are not misled. But it's not. You're right. It doesn't look good, but we. But I think we got some opportunities to at least stave off the worst of it and give animals opportunities to adapt to a new world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is an interesting perspective and a good point, though, in that it seems like every time we think that a prey base or a particular species is almost kind of gone or beyond saving or whatever, or, it seems like we always have been able to kind of help to some degree kind of rebound some of those numbers. And, I mean, I still don't know what the answer is going to be as far as the actual habitat itself goes.
Yeah.
Because we keep, breeding and expanding ourselves. So
kinda, farmland and ranch land that's growing houses doesn't hold a lot of habitat for critters, you bet.
No. So I don't know, man. We'll I guess we'll just have to continue to see how it goes and hope that there continues to be people that care enough to try and stave off what seems to be the inevitable. But I mean, I don't know, man. But I mean, if nothing else, there's a nice little temporary optimism, a bit of optimism there. So, thanks for that. Anyway.
You bet. Oh, I'm glad I could brighten your day.
That's hilarious. No, it's that's cool though. So, I mean, do you think, as far as the type of birds that you're going to keep flying, though, I mean, do you think you'll pretty much stick with peregrines for a while, or I mean, you're going to try and do anything else, or?
Yeah, I like those big prairies and peregrines for sure. I did catch a Cooper's hawk family bird this season early before the peregrine was done with her molt, and that was a lot of fun. But I couldn't do both. Hombre, I don't know how folks do it with multiple birds, and but yeah, just like 2 hours out with a Cooper's hawk and 2 hours out with a peregrine, and now I don't have a job.
It's called retirement.
Oh, dang it. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it there.
It's called retirement and or homelessness, whichever one comes first.
Yeah. Abatement is like a sidebar.
Yeah, pretty much.
Disease.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, the people have made the point that, for whatever reason, the people that are really, really successful with like some accipiters like Cooper's hawks and some of these different birds, I mean, they either are retired or have jobs or circumstances which allows them to literally spend a couple hours at least every day, pretty much literally every day, habitually flying certain species.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just as big of a key to success with some of those birds as any. I mean, really, honestly, with any species you're flying, consistency and just overall, just the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, I think. But
yeah, I agree. I mean, I do have an interest in those accipiters, though, mainly for partridge, right? That we have some partridge in certain years where they're better than others, and it would be cool to see those flights. I've tried it with big falcons, but it just is not worth messing with anymore. I keep, we'll be up in this room like where we're at now, and I'll see a bunch of chuckers like walking by, and my bird will be at weight, and I just like I can't resist. And this is the separation between the master and the apprentice is knowing when not to fly. But I can't help myself sometimes. I think maybe this will be the day, and it never is.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for that too. I think you're onto something though with the whole tiercel prairie notion.
Yeah.
I mean, that tiercel that I had, I was flying him around 400 grams.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I think that would be a great size for something like partridge.
Well, and it maybe is less intimidating to them, and they're just like, oh, I'm not sweating this little dude, and then take off, but then get caught because he's just speedy. I've always wanted to fly a tiercel prairie just because they sound awesome. But yeah, maybe at some point we'll give that a shot.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to be 100% honest, just imprinting birds is not my thing at all.
Same.
But to be 100% honest, if I was to ever try imprinting another bird again, it would probably be another prairie like that.
Yeah, it went pretty smooth. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. Yeah, I didn't. It's a lot of work.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
I mean, your summers are. That summer that you're doing that is pretty booked up.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. But I do like being able to let a bird go, down the road when they get a little, into the breeding. I don't know if I'll let this peregrine go, but who knows, man? You never know what's around the corner for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the fun of it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never know what good and or usually bad circumstance comes along to kind of help you along with whatever decision you're thinking about making. Yeah, I mean, you just never really know.
You don't think AI is going to help us predict the future? I guess it's pretty bad at that at this point.
Not for falconry, it's not.
Yeah. Luckily, that one can't be done by artificial intelligence.
Now, speaking of which, a funny side note: one of my buddies posted up. He's kind of been dabbling some just for fun with AI art, and he put in falconry bells, and it was hilarious. Like, it was this peregrine that this AI whatever thing spat out with literally like jingle bells, like Christmas, like a Christmas theme or whatever. It was one of the most horrid pictures I've ever seen in my entire life, but it was funny just as a side note. But no, I don't think AI is going to be able to. I mean, no. There's not really anything but just good old fate that's going to ever, I think, be able to really help us continue on with our falconry decisions, I think. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But all that being said, I think now would be a good time to go ahead and. You've already told a couple of pretty cool stories and stuff, but I want to get, at least one of those more memorable hunting experiences or experience with a bird, whatever the case is. And, that's always a must-have, for these, as you know. So,
yeah. Well, I've had a lot of great flights with this peregrine this season. The first two seasons that I had her, weren't excellent. But she's really kind of coming her own this one. But, maybe we'll tell a story about a prairie falcon since we talked about them so much. That was when we were hawking ducks quite a bit. And so this would probably be early in the season. The ponds hadn't frozen yet. And I used to like to go up on this, I still do, but up on this rim nearby that has some stock tanks on some public land. And I had two setters at the time, and they're in the truck, and we're driving out to this pond, and I jump out of the truck and check the pond, for ducks, and I see there's a couple of, mallards on this small water, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a good setup. And I walk back to the truck, and I get the prairie falcon all set up and let her go, and it's pretty windy, and she did okay in the wind, but she would do this thing where she would drift way downwind almost every time. Like she would just take off downwind and then make herself, make her way back to me, like in this undulating up and down kind of frequency like pattern. It was beautiful. At first it seems like, what the heck are you doing? Like, this is a terrible position, but it was so repeatable that you got used to it. And, but she didn't do that. She went and landed in the wind and landed on some sagebrush. And I thought, oh, this is, it's a waste of time. It's howling. So I tried to walk and get in better position to the pond, because I didn't know what to do at that point, just fooling around, waiting for the bird to do something that I could at least reward. And having walked back and forth to the pond like 3 times, you think I'd have done this already, but a sage grouse pops out of the sagebrush, and of course she's like, oh, takes off after it. Thanks for rewarding me with a flush while I'm sitting, which of course leads to repeated bad behavior. Yeah. And she takes off after that grouse, and then comes back and sits again. And a raven is messing with her, and it's just like, why are we even doing this? My dogs, those setters at the time, were pretty loose cannons in the pickup, and they busted out of the kennel, and they're slobbering all over the windshield and stepping all over like the equipment that's in the middle. And I'm looking over them like, what the heck are you doing? I walk back over there to check on the dogs and make sure that they're not going to lock me out of the truck, because I left my keys in there. And though he surprisingly had that bit of foresight, I walk back to the pond and flush another grouse while she's sitting, and she takes off, and I don't see her for a long time. So I walk up to the pond and I just lay down on the berm, like, what do I do next? It was all telemetry. So I pull out the old, orange handled jumbo box and point it around, and I don't have anything, and I'm listening to these ducks quack and thinking they're just all going to fly away and I'm going to have nothing. And I turn it, probably 20 minutes goes by. It's howling wind at this point. And I turn it on, and she's right above me. Like out of nowhere. I look for her and I can't find her until I see this just flash of white. And I'm thinking, oh man, she's on the money. Like, probably, I don't know how high, probably 600 feet is my guess from the size, maybe higher. And I pop over that pond, and the ducks fly away, and she just comes down and whacks a mallard right into the sagebrush. And that was the start of the season that year. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that was it sounds like that, not even a maybe, that was a blessing in disguise for you, because like you said, rewarding a bird twice, while they're sitting like that, not usually, it doesn't usually really end well. And
that's where that luck comes into play.
I was going to say,
you got to be lucky.
Yeah, you had a bit of luck there, because she got her final reward while she came up and over you and doing everything she was supposed to. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, I mean, overall, it sounds like you've had a pretty good summation of experiences, and overall, like you said, you've ended up in a place where it seems like it really kind of suits your lifestyle and what you really want, to get out of not just your falconry, but your life as well. So kudos to you on that. And if you are able to do a lot of the stuff that a lot of people like myself, just right now, it's just kind of a dream to be able to do. I mean, it's, as I don't have to tell you, like I said, just more and more opportunities for longwing just keeps getting smaller and smaller. I don't know if I'll ever be able to really, for sure, somehow or another fit it into my lifetime for myself. But I mean, like I said, it's something I'm always envious of. So
it's a beautiful thing, but so is, goshawks on rabbits and red tails on jacks. There's a lot of ways to experience this, and I admire I admire a ton of falconers for just the persistence to get out there and experience it.
Yeah, well, and I know for myself too, I've really tried my best to work hard, especially with my perspective shifting a lot and all the things I've had to deal with the last 3 to 4 years, personally as well. I've really tried to just learn to not think about all the things I don't have, but be appreciative and just have fun doing what I can do.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
It's
like practicing walking. Sometimes you think it'd be easy, but you still fall down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that in and of itself is a whole other form of like religion-esque discipline. Just learning to be content.
Keep positive.
And be positive and content with what you have. And that's cool though. Like I said, I mean, I'm congrats and I hope that you can keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for making the way all the way over the mountains to the hole in the ground that we're calling home for now.
No, man, it's cool. Like I said, I mean, before we do finish up though, I want to do like I usually do and get that piece of advice from you. You think that would be kind of cool to preserve for current and future generations of falconers, or and just like I said, wrap it up, and then I guess like you said, we can maybe go eat some sage grouse or something later. We'll see.
Bet. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just repeating some of what we were talking about before. I think it's worth not being discouraged by all the doom and gloom that we see around us. It's easy to think that like one person can't make a difference, but there's plenty of examples where that is not the case, and somebody who was passionate turned something around. But if you put a couple people together, you can really, really do something different. My grandpa used to always say, like, if you want something done right, do it yourself. But I think what he probably should have said is if you want to do something good, do it together.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, no, that's a good addition to that age-old saying. There's a lot of truth to that, and in a similar fashion, I've always heard that people make the suggestion. I can't remember who it was that I heard this from. It's a pretty popular notion, though, I think, or sentiment, is that don't try and necessarily change the world, so to speak, but just try and make an impact on your block first.
Yeah.
And then, just grow from there.
You bet.
So I think that goes pretty well hand in hand with that for sure. That's cool. You're just a ray of sunshine, man. Maybe it's just the fact that we're, having a nice porter and some Coors Light or something over there too, or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but either way, man, it's been a pleasure getting a chance to get to know you a little bit. And, I mean, like I said, this is a part of the reason why I enjoy continuing to do this and don't mind making these drives and stuff. I mean, it's been another fun and pretty cool conversation to have. And, I appreciate you being willing to, to do it and have me out. So.
Yeah, right back to you, buddy. Yeah, thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, I guess we can go ahead and just go ahead and call this good, and you can start, fixing me food.
Excellent.
Awesome, man.
Adios.